Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. This is episode number, I'm not sure.
7.
Number 7 of Chapter and Curse, where we go through this book, Gardens of the Moon, first book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. I'm a return reader, and I sit here with 3 brand new readers who are reading the book for the first time. We talk about it. Sometimes we make sense. Sometimes we don't. And feel free to comment and tell us where we are making sense if you think, and yeah, comment below. And if we're not making sense, tell us too. So in this episode, we are going to be discussing chapters 9, 10, and 11 of the book. And then we are going to, well, I like getting these guys' impressions of them before we start. But just to remind you guys, chapter 9 is the chapter that begins with a character we've haven't seen for a while, Tok the Younger, and he's waiting outside Pale for a meeting, which turns out to be with another character who we haven't seen for a while, and that's the adjunct Lorne, who you'll remember was the person who recruited Perrin in the first place. And their meeting doesn't go as planned. Tok finds that she's been ambushed, and there's the scene where he tracks her to where she's basically in a battle for her life with a couple of bodyguards, which I thought was quite a nice action scene. We haven't had that many in the book, actually.
Yeah, I definitely felt since, I mean, the last time we saw that, I think, was the siege at Pale, but this is the first time it's been so, yeah, definitely like action packed.
And I mean, there's a description of there's quite I kind of like the sort of visceral description of her sword fighting and then literally over swinging and dislocating her shoulder in the process.
Yeah.
Which I imagine is quite a thing that would happen in a sword fight to the death, but it's not something you would read about in fantasy novels much.
Yeah.
No, it's not your traditional hack and slash.
Yeah.
What was she up against? What were they called? Barghasts.
Barghast, yeah. The Barghast are a tribe, basically, and this particular group cast their lot in with Caladan Brood and with the Crimson Guard. And I think when Tok comes across them, he finds that one of them was a shaman of some kind.
Yeah, I think she finds a body of. She makes mention of that.
Yeah, well, and there's 2 MVPs to my mind in this scene. The one is Tok the Younger, who comes flying in and someone shoots 4 of them with 4 arrows while on horseback. And the other is the Talani Mas Unos Tulan, who makes his arrival by coming up through the ground with a flint sword and impaling some poor guy.
So cool. So cool.
Yeah, was that I didn't understand that bit. Was that a spell that was cast that summoned that creature?
No, because Lorne says to basically craps on him afterwards for being late for their meeting.
Okay.
So he was supposed to meet her, but it's the first time we come across, other than by mention, this group, this race, if you want to call it that, the Talan Imas, who are these undead warriors.
Yeah, they like one of the first, I think, properly ghoulish things that we sort of come across in the book.
Yeah.
They are really like a monster from a fantasy RPG,
Absolutely. A fantasy trope, although as you will see, dealt with not in a tropish way. Given a bit of depth in terms of, you get a sense Erikson's thought about what would happen if somebody lived for 300,000 years in a state of undeath. What would it do to them psychologically? What would it do to them as a people? And we'll get into it more. But it's so they meet and then they go off, and Tok, I think, accompanies the adjunct back to Pale.
Yeah.
And that scene and the characters in it. Any standouts for you guys?
I love how Tok the Younger has become just like such a definitely a standout character for me. We definitely get to see a lot more of him now, I think, obviously, than we have before. And he's great. So for me, definitely the MVP of this, and I think a lot of some of the other stuff we've read. Yeah.
Because
I've forgotten what What does he look like exactly? Because I have this weird picture in my head, but I'm not sure that it's right.
Well, he's got one eye, right?
Yeah, that's always
so that
itchy.
sort of dominates it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I think
he's quite a big dude, right?
He's only briefly described. I don't know if he's big. When he first accompanied Perrin to Pale, that was the only other time we met him. But I don't recall him being described as particularly big. But I don't think we've got much of a description of him, to be honest, other than this scar that he's continuously itching.
Yeah, I think we've almost heard more about his situation than we have about what he looks like. You know, we've heard sort of, I think even before this, about his uncle being disappointed in his line of work and that sort of thing. But yeah, like you say, not a lot of, I think, actual descriptions of what the guy looks like.
Yeah. But he also, I mean, he does get quite a lot of airtime in these chapters,
for sure,
which we haven't had before. And he's kind of a strange guy because he is a member of the Claw, but also apparently accepted by the common soldiery as well.
Yeah,
yeah. It was. I like the. As you said, it was nice to get back to a little bit of combat, a little bit more fantasy centric. And also, it brings in what we learned in the last chapters from Crone, when in the tower they were discussing what's happening in the north and how well they're doing, and now they're teaming up with the locals, as it were. And I like the skeleton. I thought that was really good. Especially the one horn is missing. The other one's it's pretty good. Cool. Yeah, imagine it popping up. But I got confused. I thought it was like a remnants of a previous battle.
No, I don't think so.
That had been summoned. Like I said, the gutter in my book is terrible, so I'm having to. Yeah.
Al sent me a pic today. Yes. It's shocking.
It's just a bad printing mistake.
It's a bad print, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that immensely. I thought it was good.
And then they go off back. She arrives at Pale, and immediately goes to meet another character we've seen before, who's Dujek One Arm.
Yes.
And it's interesting that they seem to deliberately have a meeting before Taishran can arrive.
Yeah. Gossip a little bit and get the
Yeah. To me, to me, these little sections were there were definitely all the skeletons were starting to slowly come out of the cupboard. And it's like the Karma police have been let loose, and all the dirty deeds are starting to be exposed, and quickly as well. You know, they don't even belabor the point. They just, straight into this is what's going on, and these are my suspicions. I think that was very enjoyable.
What I quite liked was you get a sense of adjunct Lorne and what the title of adjunct means, because she comes in, Dujek basically lays out his entire battle plan and literally asks her for the Empress's stamp of approval on that battle plan, and she takes a while, but then she's okay, it's done, and that's it. She is literally the Empress's executive arm.
Yeah.
And I didn't quite appreciate that before, and more that comes up a bit later again in this chapter.
What just thinking about Lorne, one of the things that sort of that caught my attention in that initial battle scene is like when it looked like all hope was lost, like very matter of fact about, okay, this is the end of the road for me, like unemotional, just very happy to die in the line of fire. She said now she thought the only thing left to do is die. She rolled onto her back, like that's it. This is just par for the course, I guess. Interesting.
Very sort of fatalistic.
Why, if she's so important though, why is she not traveling with more people with her to protect her?
She had a series of bodyguards who were elites, as they were described, and they got taken out by what appeared to be a superior force in terms of numbers. And I suspect they were ambushed because the shaman was involved in somehow getting these warriors to them. But she can look after herself.
I know, but it just the way that, I mean, as you say, she's so important. I thought she'd have had scores of men.
An army protecting her.
And then
do her bidding.
But then I got the
Yeah, but I
impression
don't
that
think. I
maybe
think
she's
doing
traveling
secret.
sort of clandestine.
That's
Yeah.
what I think. I think
Yeah.
she doesn't really want people to know she's in the city.
Yeah. Is it her who later on in a scene, oh no, it's someone else who sort of slips out of a city undetected, right?
It is her.
It is
It
her.
is
Is
her.
it her?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. So she,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know. I'm probably jumping the gun. I'm not sure where that.
No, but that is
Sure.
her.
Yeah.
I like
so,
that when Tayshan comes in. I mean, there's a huge argument between him and Dujek. He basically throws his toys out of the cot, and from their discussion, you work out that Dujek's unhappy with the fact that Tayshan's basically murdering 9 out of 10 nobles in the city, which is contrary to imperial policy to murder 1 out of 10. And then for some reason, and then there's this issue about the Hall of Records that suddenly just burned to the ground.
Yeah.
And nobody knows why, because now no one can work out who's a noble. And it seems they're just messing with each other.
yeah, it's interesting how you can go in the same chapter from like super granular descriptions of swords bashing together to this sort of like cat fighting, political infighting nonsense. Really, it's quite a wild chapter. This.
Yeah.
And I wasn't 100% clear on which alliances were the real ones as well, right? Which so does, you were talking earlier about how Lorne and Dujek were having that discussion, and then as soon as Dujek's out the door, there's a whole other discussion happening with Tayshan, which makes you think it's completely different, and so you're still not sure like where Lorne's loyalties lie and what exactly she's up to.
She seems to be angry with Tayshan for trying to make an enemy of Dujek.
Yeah. Yeah, I got the impression she wasn't particularly happy with him.
Yeah.
At all. Like I think he'd messed up.
But it felt to me like she was being earnest with Dujek and listening to him, and he was talking to her. It seemed to me from the chapter that he was talking to her and being honest about his feelings about Tayshan and all of this.
Yeah.
And immediately after, you see how she's being duplicitous about the whole thing, right? So, but at the same time trying to protect him. So it's a very murky kind
very
of situation.
complex.
Yeah. So I wasn't quite prepared for that. Like I'm still not sure which side she's on, and then the whole thing gets even more complicated when you start talking about Perrin and the rest of them.
Because Dujek, I mean, she basically tells Tayshan, you don't want to alienate this guy. If he goes against us, then the whole army goes with him. So she seems to almost treat Tayshan as a complete incompetent in the way he's managing the situation.
But also, doesn't she have this passionate hatred of mages and
there's that history,
and she's got that.
She's got a sword made of otatarol.
That sword sounds badass, man.
Yeah, it does. It's the anti-magic ore that gets mined in 7 cities.
Flipping cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, more on the subject later.
Exactly. But also he seems to almost like revert to this he's got this air about him, like usually Tayshan I'm talking about, and he's usually this arrogant whatever, and then when she's there he seemed to retreat a little bit, like the way that he interacted with her was a bit different, and I thought that was interesting. And initially he's got the bluster, but then he sort of he reins himself in, and I wonder about that power dynamic.
And also think of it, we must also consider points of view. I mean, up till now we've seen Tayshan through Tattersail's point of view, and he's quite aloof and distant and a bit of a badass. Now we see him from Lorne's point of view, and he's coming across as a little bit of a bumbler.
Yeah. A child that's been scolded.
Yeah. And then guys, we get to what I definitely think is my second favorite scene out of these chapters is this dinner party. I just thought,
Chaos.
I don't, you never know in what order an author has written the book. So you can never tell whether it's chronological in terms of editing or writing or re-editing. But it just seemed to me that at this point, Erikson starts to hit his straps in terms of writing dynamic dialogue between characters. It just felt like such a natural scene. I mean, it was hectic. It wasn't natural. There was some crazy stuff going on, but it really flowed. That was my view anyway.
It did flow. It almost like things accelerated all of a sudden. Like you just turned the page and then bam, it was like this explosion that happened. Because when you knew something was coming, right? When there was this, you knew that Lorne had something that she wanted to say to Tattersall, or she was remembering something. And we always knew right from the start, we were saying there's some depth to Tattersall, there's some history and baggage and something there, which we didn't really know about, right? But I mean, just for her to just come at her immediately as she comes through the door was really quite something.
Yeah, 100%. Like no subtlety.
Yeah,
it's so funny when you mentioned that line about knowing that something was coming. It's one of the ones that I highlighted, and I was like, oh, I've picked up on a clue. This is going to be something I'm going to be. And then like 3 pages later, it's resolved.
It's laid out.
All right, exactly.
Yeah, because that something is the cull in the mouse quarter that took place in the prologue, and we watched it from the balcony with Perrin and Whiskey Jack, and something I think Al picked up the line. It's a bad sign when bad smell when sorcerers panic.
Yeah.
Yes.
The sorcerers were purging the mouse quarter at the time. And that's
when Perrin said that the abattoirs caught a light.
Yes, exactly. And he said, "Sure, boy." It's an abattoir.
Yeah, it's the pigs. Yeah. There's a lot goes back to those. This time loop keeps on jumping back to that specific point, and then you jump forward again, and it's a nice reference piece because obviously you're getting into the book on the first page, but it's nice that it now further in gives that bit context as well. That it wasn't just written as a stocking filler. It was actually written with intent. And now you see that play out, how the mages just went hog wild and just started,
And Tattersall doesn't deny it for a second.
No. And she's not proud of it. Yeah.
No, she's not proud of it either.
Yeah. And poor old Tok, the whole thing is told through his perspective.
I love it.
He's like the one guy at the dinner party who can't work out how he got invited.
He's the plus one.
He even tries to leave at some point, right? He's like, I'm in over my head here.
And afterwards, he's like, I'm going to lay low just so I don't get invited to any more of these fucking dinner parties.
Yeah, it's also quite a cool scene which shows what a cool guy Dujek is when Tok walks in and he's very awkward. And he doesn't know what to do, and Dujek immediately starts scratching his stump, and he just itches, and Tok says, "Yeah, well, at least I can use 2 hands when mine itches," kind of thing. He just breaks the ice, with a guy who's clearly awkward,
and gives him a drink.
Yeah, but then Tok is almost like brought in because he's a member of the Claw, or at least ostensibly that's why he's supposed to be there, and then he's the sort of. He's almost being used as a truth sayer from the Dune world by Lorne, and then Tattersall lies through her teeth, and rather than give her away, he goes with the lie and doesn't let on that she's lying. I think it's about Whiskey Jack and then. So I thought that was quite interesting, just from the dynamics of who's siding with who here.
Yeah, but that made it harder to know who's siding with who exactly, right? Because you saw Tok earlier with Perrin, and then that Perrin and Lorne have a thing going, and then so now Tok is hiding something that Tattersall's saying. So like it's just very ingewikkeld. It's like you just don't know what's going on.
And it seems to be for no reason other than his loyalty to the army that she's loyal to. We're in the same army, so we don't turn on each other, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it was odd to me that and I'm not sure, I mean, maybe they cover this somewhere else, but is it the fact that he's a claw that allowed him to pick up on her lie when the others didn't?
I think so. Because she's hiding it. She's good at hiding it, obviously.
I wonder if it's a magical thing he has, or just purely because it's his business to know people.
He seems to
Or maybe
have
both.
some connection to magic. It's got his scar that itches at certain times and doesn't at other times. He's almost got some kind of sensitivity or something, it seems to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Later on, there's something else that's described going on in his eye. Something magical.
Yeah.
But what was the quote about when you lose your sight, you lose your insight as well? What is that about?
Well,
it was referring to something, right?
He talks about a tradition in 7 cities from whence he comes, as does Kalam and Quickben, and Helok for that matter. And he says that they have a tradition that if you lose an eye, you gain an inner eye or something.
It's when your inner eye opens or whatever.
Yeah.
Was it that way around? So
Yeah.
I got it wrong then. Yeah. Okay.
I think that's
but that works, right? Because that's potentially saying that he's gained some abilities.
Yeah. And meanwhile, of course, Tadasel is hiding Perrin in her room, which they start off, it seems, really not trusting each other at all, because Tadasel sees Perrin as aligned to Lorne, and there's this kind of caginess that goes away quite quickly.
Because she's confused. I mean, she's obviously gone through what she went through in chapter, whatever it was, chapter 6 or 7, and then she wakes up. Is that correct?
Yeah, she wakes up, and he's been looking after her, and she was. That's right.
Yeah, and she can't really remember what's gone on, and he's unsure what's gone on.
But I mean, he knows why he's there. He's there. I mean, his mission was to find Sorry.
Correct, but what I'm alluding to is the fact that he's still trying to come to terms with his death, because that's kind of almost like the last thing he remembers. So I suppose they're both trying to catch up with each other. But you're right, though. It does seem at odds when that intro.
And there's some, I've read some criticism for what is referred to in negative terms. It's something that happens in fantasy literature a lot, which is called insta-love.
Yeah. I know, the banging out of nowhere. Wow.
Yeah,
but I don't know if it is out of nowhere. I don't
think it's a love story. I think Perrin's in love with Tadasel. I don't think Tadasel's in love with Perrin at all.
Correct, and I think that they've set that up right, all the way through like how quickly she got over her lover that died earlier.
Like 2 chapters ago, he got smoked.
I kind of just got the impression that was because she had lived so much longer, and maybe was used to love being a fleeting thing.
Yeah,
I'll be honest, I didn't get any of that. Oops.
No, I hadn't picked up the flirting or whatever that was happening before.
There was a bit of it. I mean, and
listen, at that stage, I was just trying not to fall out of the moving vehicle and just hanging on for dear life with this book.
You're still clinging on with the brakes severed. Yeah,
exactly.
And then I think the last scene of this chapter is Lorne incognito escaping or riding out of the city gates. And Dujek is arranged to have all the guards be off duty when she goes out that way.
Yeah.
And that's,
lots of wheels within wheels within wheels.
But we get more information in the next chapter as to what she's on about and why she's traveling with a Clan Imas. We'll get more clues anyway.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, unless you guys want to deal with anything from chapter 9, we could probably move on to 10.
Yeah,
I think just one more thing
Yes.
About chapter 9, because Perrin, in that discussion that Perrin has with Tadasel, they do start talking about his sword and about Opon and all of that, and it starts to become clearer, or at least I thought so. And then now all of them are talking about Opon as being part of this game, but not overtly. You know what I mean? Like it's weird. Like I don't know how they just went, oh yeah, okay, the god's in the game, and like let's keep moving. So it just feels to me like, do they have any context for this? Like, have they seen this kind of thing before? Is this something that's known to happen? Like, they don't seem very surprised by it. Whenever people mention Opon, they go, oh yeah, Opon's, on it again.
Yeah, but don't forget, Tattersall in her initial readings of the deck of dragons found the Opon card as she was the one whose divination came across it for the first time. But I think the gods there's a very different relationship between gods and mortals in this world than there is in a lot of other worlds.
Yeah, which we're only starting to pick up on now, right? Because I think in the early, when she did the reading, and it still felt like there was a bit of a reverence there and a bit of like, it's weird that this coin is happening and that means that the gods getting involved and all that. So it still seemed weird, but now everybody else that gets told about it or works it out for themselves, they just go like, oh yeah, okay. Let's keep moving.
Because Tattersall basically says, well, you're being manipulated by Opon, to Perrin. That's it. It's a given. This is what's happening. We know Sori's been possessed by another deity. So it's another direct intervention.
Yeah.
And they seem to have worked that one out as well.
Yeah, well, the bridge burners seem to have.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's in
everybody
this
seems to have worked it out.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's in this chapter or one of the later ones where you sort of hear a little bit of her inner monologue, and it does feel like it comes and goes a little bit, like maybe she's in control for a bit and then it slips in. So that's like another layer of complexity. Are we looking at like possessed sorry or sorry?
Yeah, and that's also fascinating. That's going to call back to the first chapter again, but let's go on to chapter 10 if you guys are happy to do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And chapter 10 is it kind of travels all over the place. It starts off with a sort of fancy lunch between Perrin and Tok the Younger. They go to a restaurant, and basically Perrin tells Tok that he's going to go after Tattersall, who's left the city, and Tok basically invites himself along too. It was an interesting scene because I really like those two characters. But it was difficult to ascertain who knows who about whom.
And also there's that message that the bartender gives to, I think, is a Tok before he sees Perrin, that there's someone who was out of his depth and didn't know it, but now they do.
Yeah. At least I think Perrin he's got a bit of a sense of humor as well. I mean, he's always spitting in people's faces, but he is kind of sort of getting a bit of humility as he gets a bit older.
That is something that came through in these chapters, especially like maybe this one and the next one, like the comedy factor. There was a lot of stuff, especially later on, that I think we'll talk about when we get to, but it definitely felt like there was a lot more jokes and a lot more sort of lighthearted stuff going on in some of these scenes, as opposed to a lot of the stuff we've read before, which has been very dense and not particularly lighthearted in any way. So.
Yeah, I get a sense Erikson sort of finding his rhythm a bit better in terms of the balance between those kind of things.
And I think it was kind of surprising where some of that humor was coming from as well, right? So like the characters that you maybe didn't expect to be making fun of each other were, and so it's interesting to see that coming in as well from different points of view than you might expect.
Yeah, even from the undead, there's some humor.
That was some of my favorite.
That's what they call dry humor.
Yeah,
bone dry.
Yeah, bone dry. So maybe it's time to discuss a scene that is quite jarring. I mean, in terms of what happens in the story, and that is when Tattersall's traveling by Warren, but the Warren has now become unmanageable.
Unstable.
Unstable. So she zones back into the real world, out of the Warren, and is immediately confronted by our friend Beladan, who she helped earlier in the book when his lover Nigel was broken into tiny pieces.
And he's still lugging the sack around.
He's still carrying the bag around with him.
But where the heck has he been? Because I was like very shocked to now all of a sudden find him, and he's still under the service of Tayshrin, and he's like loyal and all of that. Like, but where's
Weirdly
he been?
loyal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I assume he's been in and around Pale, but I don't know.
But I mean, wasn't he aware of what happened at the siege? I mean, he was there, surely. And
Exactly, and they even discussed it. They even talked about it.
I mean, he knows what Tayshrin has been accused of doing, at least. And I
Well,
mean,
he knows what
he has
Tattersall
done.
told him Tayshrin has been doing. Tattersall said directly, you mustn't trust the man. He'd try to get you all killed.
Yeah.
But here he is, still doing Tayshrin's bidding.
What a knob.
And I mean, he managed, and all Tattersall manages to do is to get some information out of him. And it turns out what he was researching for Tayshrin was all about these things called Jagut tyrants. So just for context, the Jagut are an ancient race in this world. If you imagine a race that goes back to the Ice Age, so they were sort of cut solitary creatures. Their warren is ice, Omtos Falak, it's called. And they eventually got into wars with the new kids on the block thousands of years earlier, who were the Imas, the children of fire, the warren of Telan, and so then there was countless wars between them. And basically, at some occasion, these tyrants arose among the Jagut and then enslaved all sorts of people, and they were buried in these barrows, kind of more like a burial and an imprisonment. And Tattersall comes to the conclusion that that's what Lorne is here to do, to release one of these tyrants. She draws that inference.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like Indiana Jones or something. They're trying to find some relic and trying to bring someone back to life. Or
yeah, I got those vibes from what's his name? R.R. Martin's First People. You know, like those.
Oh, the Children of the Forest.
Yeah, I got those kind of vibes from when that was being discussed.
Yeah,
not in a bad way, and it reminded me of that. Yeah, there's definitely things afoot. Yeah,
but I mean, poor old Tattersall. I mean, this Billiton just seems unmovable, and eventually, there's this. They both let loose their warrens at the same time. Just before that, she hits upon a plan that's got something to do with the dead body of Nightchill. And clearly, the inference is she's going to do something similar to what happened to Hairlock.
A soul shift.
Yeah. But I like that you don't actually get told what's done. You see it from Lorne and from Unos Tulans. You just see this pillar of flame somewhere off in the distance. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he even says like that's magic that is too close. You know, it's ignoring my wards or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and you know, you've said before that we're now starting to learn little by little about the warrens and all of that, and it was quite interesting to hear some of what can affect it and how the travel works and that kind of thing, and how she was being affected by this other dude, the zombie guy, and like
nearby within a certain range.
Which was kind of strange, and that if she had opened fully, that she would have just been obliterated. So obviously that's kind of what happens to them at this point, right?
Yeah, it seems to be, and it happens quite quickly. I mean, that she's making the plan, and then she has to act, and then it's just a massive explosion.
Sorry to cut in and to take it right back.
Yeah,
but I was just, as we were talking and talking to the Warrens and the magic and everything, is it the beginning of chapter 9 where it's Tok riding on his horse?
Yes.
And he can smell the magic. That's right.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah, I've forgotten about that.
Yeah, he can smell the magic, and he's got that sound. What was it? Like a sound and a taste? There's a very clever little line there that he's
I can't remember how it's described, but you're right. And that's how he works out that there was a shaman involved in these troops there. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Okay, so that kind of answers my question about Tok's abilities.
Top's he's got some kind of sense.
Got a nose for magic.
Nose for magic. Well, yeah, clearly, yeah. Okay, sorry. Back to chapter 10. My mistake.
Yeah, no, I mean that's
No,
a good
nice.
point.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
Good
I missed that entirely. Fuck.
Yeah.
But we so they basically take each other out, and all you get is this pillar of flame. I really liked because you cut back to Lorne and Tool, as he's called, and there's a line where he says, let me just find it because I thought it was really cool when I read it. So 334 in my book. When she starts to get a bit anxious, and she says her scowl deepened as she walked to the camp. Tool, standing immobile beside the flames, reminded her of his arrival 2 days ago. The fiery glimmer that jumped along his withered flesh and bone helm once again triggered something primordial in her mind, and with it came a deep, unreasoning fear of darkness. She stepped close to the Imas. Fire is life, she whispered, the phrase seeming to rise from the depth of instinct. Tool nodded. Life is fire, he said. With such words was born the first empire, the empire of Imas, the empire of humanity. The warrior turned to the adjunct. You've done well, my child. I mean,
so cool.
Getting such a lot of depth to the undead, which I really quite enjoy it, because we've all played role-playing games, and we love this sort of undead trope, but it's very tropish, and very little depth in most fantasy writing when you talk about the undead. But I just love the link between calling her child, humans being the sort of descendants of the Imas. From a time fire was life.
He mentions a few warrens, right? And that was also like he just rattles them off. And
goes through the whole list. Yeah.
All of these warrens, and so what do we think happened there? Because usually, I guess, the expectation was that it was just one warren, and he then named off like 6 or 7, and including the one that we'd never heard of before, and she'd never heard of before either.
Elder Warren of Starrival Damelang. That's because he lists her warren, he lists Beladan's warren, a couple of others, and then that one as an elder magic, or an elder warren, and she's never heard of it before. That's somehow all contained in this fiery pillar.
Dun, dun, dun.
Another mystery.
Just what we needed.
Yeah.
More mystery.
More mystery. More shit to be confused
mystery,
by.
please.
Yeah.
But Rob, I've got to ask you though, does a lot of this mystery get explained by the end of this first book?
Yes, more than no.
Yes, and no.
A lot of it does. Yes, a lot of it doesn't, and then it gets explained later in later books.
I mean, would you say that this is a satisfying read on its own? Or
yes. Yeah, I think
really?
so. Yeah.
Okay, could stand alone.
It's also the most sort of, I don't know, it's the most traditional in terms of story arcs of all the books. So it kind of has a beginning, a middle, sort of reaches a crescendo to the end, kind of thing.
I'm scared, and the others don't.
Yeah, is this the traditional one?
Oh
Yeah,
my God.
yeah, no, in one sense, traditional in terms of subject matter, I suppose, rather than structure. The others are more, I don't want to. Let me not give too much away, because I might tell you too much about the ending.
Well,
But
then Crone comes back.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
whose favorite is
Hey.
everyone likes Crone.
Crone rocks, man.
Oh, so
I like
good.
Crone.
But she's on her way to, and now we meet with her Caladan brood for the first time.
Yeah, very
The
cool.
warlord. He's almost described as almost bestial. in
Just
terms of-
huge. Just this.
enormous, with this huge hammer that he carries on his back.
But he also comes across as being quite cerebral and like
Very human.
But also talking down to
he's
up
prone a
until
bit of
then,
shit. Yeah.
we sort of thought that Animander Rake is like this freaking badass, like he's this, and then he just talks down to him. He's just like, that guy doesn't know anything.
It's interesting little scene because you see, obviously there's a little bit of tactics. It almost seems like Crone is trying to mine Caladan brood for what his tactics are.
Yeah, my tactics are my business, or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Piss off, you old bird.
Oh, that's my best.
Yeah.
The comedy with these two. I don't know if any of you have ever watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Haven't, no.
Okay, never mind then. But the bird line, anyone who's watching the video and watches Always Sunny will appreciate the bird line. It's very
Yeah.
good. Yeah, shut up, bird.
Yeah. Yeah, she's quite annoying, but also obviously very powerful and useful.
Yeah, and he just says, "Get out of here, Crow." Crow, how
And,
dare you?
Who is he recruited to fight from up there? There was a mention of a.
He talks about
I can't remember what they're called now.
can't remember, yeah. They're not the Crimson Guard.
I think so. That might have been it.
The Crimson
There was
Guard
a-
are a mercenary company, basically.
Yeah, and I think there was something mentioned. It starts with a K, although I'm probably misremembering.
Oh yeah,
horribly.
because then we meet his second in command, who's the High King Kalor,
That's it.
who's a sour old bastard. In fact, I think it's Kalor who's mentioned in the beginning of that chapter.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's also quite a little humorous section there, if I recall
There
correctly.
was, yeah.
Is that chapter 10?
It's at the start of chapter 10, yeah.
Kalor said, I walked the land when the Tlanimas were but children. I have commanded armies 100,000 strong. I have spread the fire of my wrath across entire continents and sat alone upon tall thrones. Do you grasp the meaning of this? Yes, said Caladan Brood, you never learn. So it's which is quite, I think, quite a nice comeback. But about
Very good.
Kalor is very self-important, and
But this is the first we're hearing of him, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
we haven't. So
We've never seen him, I think.
No.
We have. There
So
have
what's-
been mentions of him, but yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we've never
What-
been up.
what is
We've never
he-
been up here before.
what kind of what does he look like? What sort of what's
tall,
his?
gray-skinned, ashen-faced human being, bearded, cadaverous, like Grand Moff Tarkin from Star Wars with a beard is how I imagine.
Is this Caladan Brood?
No,
No,
Kalor.
Kalor.
Oh, I was about to say. Not my Caladan
No,
Brood.
Caladan Brood is big, robust,
He's a dish.
Ogre.
half ogre kind of dude.
A dish best served cold.
And then that's all we get from that little scene. But then we get the sort of CSI Tok and Perrin coming across the scene of destruction. And this scene was very creepy the way when I read it. It almost had horror vibes to it, where they come across the scene of Tattersall and Belidan's evisceration.
Horrible. Yeah.
And then Tok finds the burlap sack is now empty. And something has walked away from it on small skeletal feet, which is creepy as hell. If you
It's
ask
so
me.
creepy and so gross. Because you know it's just a bag of guts.
What it was a bag of body parts
Yeah.
that had a preservation spell cast on it.
But don't they also, one of them, as they're approaching, refer to Tattersall's body as gigantic or enormous or something?
They may do.
I think someone does. I just thought, how rude. She's obviously having a bad enough day.
Yeah.
I'll find it. Yeah, no, I just thought, wow.
Well, Perrin takes it badly. I mean,
Yeah.
but
He's
Perrin,
whipped.
yeah, I know. Perrin is just getting more and more sort of like he's just getting hit every day with something else. He's dying now. His lover's dying.
But also, yeah, I think that, you know, we're getting more and more of a taste of what you talk about, Rob, that people mention as being one of the issues is like never really anyone really dying, really.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think lots of people die, just not that many main characters.
Yes, yeah. It's interesting though. Do you not feel like the stakes are like lowered somewhat, just knowing that there's this constant cycle of your characters getting resurrected, or is it?
Well, I would hold that.
Yeah,
thought before you talk
okay.
about resurrection.
Really knock the sales out of you later, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, Perrin is probably the only character that I know of in the series that comes back the same, or more or less the same.
Interesting.
Let's put it that way.
got you.
I've got a question. And this is sort of book adjacent, but when people discuss the book and they knock it because they don't like it, do they knock it because they don't like the style, or do they knock it because they don't like the content?
I think mostly the style is what people have difficulties with. The style and the fact that there isn't a central hero narrative to it, and in that it's a lot of disparate narratives are slowly being drawn together, as opposed to knowing who the protagonist is, associating with the protagonist, going with them on a journey, culminating in some kind of catharsis.
So no one's ever really knocking like, oh, the Malazan wouldn't do this because they're stupid, and this is stupid, and this character's stupid.
No, there is. I mean, I've seen criticism of people saying this doesn't make any sense. This decision, this character wouldn't have
Happens
done
when
that.
you roll a 1.
Yeah, and I think there's some of that. Sometimes, I mean, I've heard Erikson say, people make bad decisions all the time.
That's also true.
All the time.
I mean, it's like, and that touches on something which I think you don't really see it in this novel, but you see it in later novels. Isn't that he's doing fantasy, but not escapism, and that's just my view.
No, it's not escapism at all. This is not.
There's something quite realistic about the things that he puts out, more so in later books. But it doesn't feel like escapist literature in a sense that you read it and disappear into a world and things follow nice set patterns and you feel better about yourself.
No.
It's like a historical chronicle almost,
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the intention anyway.
Yeah, I was just wondering about that.
Why do you ask, Al?
No, because I find the structure like really hard, and the sheer amount of characters, I find that hard as well. But you can't knock his world building, dude. I mean, say what you want.
No.
You might not. Oh, this doesn't work and that doesn't work, and I don't like to jump around. Fair enough. That's a great point. But just the sheer level of detail, it's admirable. It really is. It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
You might not like it, but you got to give them 2 thumbs up for bloody, getting stuck in and creating some amazing stuff. Amazing characters, history, places, gods. Just the hierarchies. Everything to do with it. It's good.
Yeah, and I mean, when we get to the sort of end of chapter 10, we have another crone scene. I know you guys like your crone scenes, but this one made me laugh because this was crone and hairlock in the same scene together. I thought Alistair must be torn asunder because you got crone like joining all the other ravens who are being attacked from the ground by a hairlock. He's doing these hit and run fireball attacks and jumping back inside his warren.
Yeah, Raven
hilarious.
A mad scene.
Yeah, I'm
just tiny little marionette running across the landscape alone, and then pops back into the warren. Cheeky.
Yeah, he's annoying,
and he's
super annoying.
And it's set up as something completely random and just chaotic that he's doing.
Yeah.
But then there's a little line at the end of the scene, which is that as a result of all this chaos, Crone misses Lorne and the Tlanimas who are sleeping in a camp.
Yeah, because up until that point, you would think, well, what does he have to gain from doing this other than, wow, he really has gone completely nuts, which is entirely possible. And Al, I think, believes happened ages.
He's a machina.
I'm going to make a T-shirt that says "Hair shirt must die horribly."
If you say that, you'll be referring to the wrong character because there is a hair shirt later in the series. This is hair.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not a character called hair shirt, but a character who wears a hair shirt.
Oh no. The hairy puppet.
Yeah, and then we round out the chapter with Lorne and Toole, and there's that really like humorous quote about thinking about all he thinks about is futility.
Yeah.
And then she asks him, well, what do other Tlanimas think about it? He says, well, they don't think about anything really. And she says, why not? He says, because it's futile.
Yeah, that was my best. I mean,
Yeah.
Gosh.
No, I like that. And then just a warning to Adil, we're going into spoiler territory for him in chapter 11 here. But
Do it.
because there is quite a bit of spoilers in chapter 11. And
Cool.
it starts off with another dream of Krupp.
Before we go there, though, sorry.
Yes. Sorry, Al.
Something that I enjoyed, which to me raised the stakes a lot, was the fact that in 9 and 10, when they discuss Upon and the coin and how things are shifting, and I think everyone started to realize now that the focal point of all of these magical sort of deity getting involved and everything is the Registone, which I think is great, because now it puts, because now your mind jumps back to, the bridge burners are there and Whiskey Jack's there.
Yeah.
And now obviously this is like some focal point of whatever.
Everyone seems to be heading in that direction.
Yeah. Regardless. So I like that a lot, and they've only worked out now. And when they realize what it is, I like the fact that they're all a bit shit scared about that, because they know that something's gone awry and something's going to go awry, but they have no understanding of what it is or the scope of it. They just know that whatever it is going to be massive. That's what I took away from it. I like that.
No, I think you get that sense of building. I agree. Yeah.
I like it.
But also, just on that Opon point, right? There was a point where Kaladin Brood says to Crone that the coin bearer needs to be protected, and that was like, I'm not sure what his game is on, and what his investment is in that whole thing, and how much he knows about that, right? So, like, but he's got this feeling that this coin bearer needs to be protected, and I don't know what he's gonna do to help with that.
Sorry, who was that? Who wants to protect the coin bearer?
It was Brood, Kaladin Brood.
Oh, yes. Kaladin Brood. Oh, I didn't know. Did he say that?
So he says. So he says to the point where Crone's talking about it, and the Lord and Lady, and then he says, "Quiet bird, the coin bearer needs protection now that Rake's recalled his mages." So
that's interesting.
So I was like, I'm not quite sure what that means exactly.
Yeah, I missed that completely.
Are we talking about the coin bearer in the Registan?
Must be.
Well, there's only one coin bearer, right?
So they are talking about, I was guessing, the literal coin.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about Frodo, right? So Frodo,
Frodo in the ring.
He's in the middle of it all.
Yeah.
Because then also, I mean, because I look at Perrin, and then he's been brought back by
Upon
as well. So he's also
he's the guy. He's the guy.
No, I'm talking about the boy who's got the actual coin.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
So,
Perrin's a bit of a wild card, I think, because he's been manipulated he was brought back to life by Upon. There was also at the time the Shadow Throne was involved. There were Hounds of Shadow at that ceremony. And then he's suddenly back in the land of the living. And they said, well, we're gonna, you'll be spared, but we're gonna need to take another life in your stead. So he's
it's all coming back to me now.
It's all coming back.
So much. And then obviously chapter 11, which Adil didn't read because he's naughty.
Yeah. So chapter 11, Adil, begins in Krupp's dream, and this time Krupp's in another dream of his own, but now he's thousands of years in the past on the sort of Arctic tundra with a bone caster, which is like a shaman of the original Imas, by the name of Pran Chol. And they seem to be, they're waiting for something, and then they get joined by a woman from modern day, one of the Rivi people who live in and around Hale and the Registan, and she's heavily pregnant with this tattoo of this fox on her belly. And then Krupp's told to go and find what's lurking out there and bring them to the fire. It's a flippin' creepy scene, I thought.
But it's great how Krupp's dream world has just kind of become this de facto meeting place, because it's one of the only places that they can all access, right?
But we get some clues about it in this chapter, because also, and I never thought about it before, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it seems to me Krupp's dreams may be a warren in themselves.
That's interesting.
True. He's always having these very lucid. He's always
Yeah.
like completely lucid and in control of everything.
And
Yeah, it's not like
hosting
he's
people.
it's not like he's dreaming of, I don't know, turning into a giant football and being kicked
Yeah.
around by, he's always going somewhere and doing things and meeting
And he's
people.
feeling the blisters on his feet,
Yeah.
It's very different. Yeah, that's a good point,
It's a
actually.
good point, that Gareth. It might be his own little Warren.
That was Rob's point, but
Oh,
I'll
sorry.
gladly take the credit.
And honestly, that doesn't. I haven't heard that said before, but it just seems to make sense.
You heard it here first, folks, on
Yeah.
Chapter and Curse, episode 7.
And he wanders around a bit inside his own dream warren, away from the fire, and then comes across this creature stumbling around, who
Hair
appears to be
shirts.
the remnants of Nightchill, the eviscerated sorceress, who's not really described other than sort of haggish and limping. And then he leads her back to the fire, and then they do a ritual. And in the middle of this ritual, the god Krull arrives, just
As you
standing
do.
next to him. Yeah. And basically, what seems to happen is Nightchill falls apart, and this ruby woman then gives birth. And we have some pretty graphic detail of that birth as well, including
Biting the umbilical cord.
biting the umbilical cord with it, and
Something
those
about
kind of-
afterbirth as well, I think.
yes,
You
and then
missed so
after
much,
birth-
Adil. You missed so much, buddy.
Yeah. So
Well, the good thing is, Adil, when you read this, and now you'll have a hell of a lot more understanding of it than the rest of us did reading it the first time.
yeah. So Gareth and Alistair, what did you make of that ritual? What happened there?
So my understanding was that this
don't
was
know.
Tattersall now being soul shifted into this infant.
Yeah. That's what I got from that as well. Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
all of a
kinda
sudden,
makes
as
sense.
soon as the baby's born, the tattoo's gone, like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
Mm.
It is
Um,
very interesting.
And it's all happening inside this Krupp's dream.
Yeah.
And
That's
they
what I
said-
got as well, because I didn't think that the other character that she met in the last chapter, Tattersall met in the last chapter, I mean, he's got a little bit of screen time, but not enough, I think, to warrant all of this ritual stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I think. I agree with Gareth on that. I think that's what.
Yeah, that's how I saw it as well. I
Mm.
mean, and there's a line in here which talks about Krupp's dream being a safe place from the new gods. They can't. There's somewhere where they can't get to, which I thought was pretty fascinating as well.
So are you suggesting then, Rob, that in his dream was where this stuff was actually happening, or is it just he's astral traveling and he can see this thing happening somewhere else? Like,
No, I
mean,
think I get a sense he can create a place in his dreams where things can actually happen.
yeah, because
that's
is that
my
then, you remember when the Tilanimus picked up on all these warrens, was that maybe talking about Krupp's warren that he could smell a little bit of?
Maybe I hadn't
That's
even thought about
interesting.
that.
That's interesting.
I had not thought about that.
I must actually read that again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Mm.
And
Because
again,
remember, he also said there was that elder warren that he picked up on, right?
Yeah.
And now, I mean, it can't be too huge. It's like a coincidence that Krupp is picking up on the like this elder god in his warren.
Yeah.
So
Yes. And he's talking about the fact that he's got an elder god at the ceremony with him.
yeah,
And then
Krull.
Kroll and talks about how the fact that everyone here is safe from the new gods because they can't penetrate this place.
and
Yeah,
Krull, obviously, we met last week.
yeah, he's the god who seems to have
He's
come
the
back to life
elder
from
god,
the
yeah.
ancient times. Yeah,
Yeah,
And
because
Roger
there was
Stone.
blood spilled in the belfry. Hey?
that's it. Yeah, so he's sort of kind of becoming reinvigorated.
It's I don't know if you guys have ever seen Hellraiser.
Yeah,
Hellraiser vibes, bringing Frank back to life.
yeah. Kroll and Hellraiser is actually quite a good comparison, I think. And we then, and anyone else, anything about that scene, I just found very surreal and kind of creepy. And weirdly enough, if I'd read that scene and understood it when I read this book the first time, I would have understood a lot of what happens in some of the other books better than I did.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They mentioned something though about a soul taken,
Yes.
which is they say it's like a shapeshifter, right?
Yeah, a soul taken in this world is exactly that. It's someone who has another form.
So are they saying that they're turning Tattersall into a soul taken, or she's going to become a soul
they are.
taken?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was hoping they weren't going to try and make the infant thing work like they did the puppet thing. Because then I know Al would be out.
I'm out for
A
it.
talking fireball baby.
Yeah.
The infant thing's gonna work. Yeah.
Boss Baby.
Yeah. Do you remember?
Boss Baby and Pinocchio.
But you know what I can't help thinking about? You know, Erikson is heavily influenced by Dune, by Frank Herbert. I don't know if you remember in Dune, that's what happens to Paula Atreides' sister. She's in the womb when her mother drinks the worm juice. And as a result, she gets like massively accelerated in terms of her intellectual and spiritual development. And I was thinking it might be something similar here. But anyway.
Yeah, Boss Baby and Pinocchio and
Yeah.
TikTok.
Puppets, Fireball Baby.
Yeah.
Do they explain much about that pregnant woman?
No, but she seems to be like literally. She's described as from Krupp's own time, like a modern woman.
Oh, okay. So it's not that Nightchill was pregnant.
No, Nightchill is just basically dies in this process.
Nightchill was just a bag of
Yeah, it's definitely someone described as being from the Rivi Plain or whatever.
Yeah.
Knupper used to annoy me, but I'm actually quite enjoying him now.
Oh, I love him.
I find the dreams I find them. I know they're bizarre and they're quite messed up, but I find them almost calming in a sense. Like it's like a little breather. Like okay.
And if you do them in the Yoda voice, it really helps.
Well, I must try that. But it's almost like it puts all the real worldy stuff going on. It kind of gives you like a couple of minutes just to pause and say, all right, you know, I'm in this dream.
Weird surreal dream moment.
Yeah, and I know it's supposed to be weird, so I'm fully into it.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's nice just to get that break. I quite enjoy him.
Yeah, it's almost peaceful compared to
it is a bit
character jumping.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting.
Well, talking of which, we then get to Steven Erikson doing a Quentin Tarantino on us, because we then get told the next scene actually takes place significantly before Krupp's dream, and in fact, it takes place exactly following on the scene we referred to in another video, where Baruch is looking out of his window and he pours the wine and it stains his paper. Because that was when Krupp came to see him about the coin, etc. So we literally get Krupp on his way out of that of that meeting.
Yeah.
And a few sort of weird coincidences contrived to make him not leave at exactly the time he was going to leave before. And as he leaves Baruch's residence, he hears something which he identifies immediately as a Malazan curse. And being Krupp, he's sharp as a tack, and he picks up that this is somebody Malazan is nearby. And there's also a great moment where he, in addition to hearing the curse, he says he gets a sort of I don't know, detect magic kind of vision of some kind, where he immediately says something about the rope. Oh yeah, he says that, he whispered, was indeed a Malazan curse. And then, why does House Shadow's image burn like fire in Krupp's skull? Who now walks the streets of Darugistan? A count of knots unending, mysteries solved, more mysteries created. And that phrase, a count of knots unending, was used once before in this novel.
Sherlock.
For $1 million, what page?
What page?
Steven Erikson.
Yeah, and it's literally back in
the prologue. Again.
Tattersall's Deck of Dragons reading.
Lord.
She slapped the third card immediately in front of her. Behind her lids an image formed. It left her cold and frightened. Assassin, High House Shadow, the rope, a count of knots unending. The patron of assassins is in the game.
Dun, dun,
Yeah.
Okay.
So there we go. And then but Krupp immediately, that's what he says when he and then very quickly we find out who these Malazans are, because there's been another time jump, and we realize that the scene of Whiskey Jack and the boys come on the other side of the lake took place way earlier than we are led to believe, because the road crew underneath Baruch's window who've been disturbing him with their noise is none other but the bridge burners. And they are busy posing as effectively road workers. Was that
two of them, hey? Yeah.
Was anyone surprised by that, or was it whatever?
No, I knew there'd be some sort of infiltration. It's just like, okay, dudes, we need to be fishermen, and now we have to be road workers.
Yeah.
Like,
it's interesting, how they've gone from just being like your soldiers, not having to do any of this clandestine stuff, to slipping very quickly into let's put on a disguise, let's assume, let's deceive. It's obviously just.
But that was what was missing for me right from the start, right? I mean, they were talked with this reverence and this unit that's so elite and blah blah blah, and they hadn't done anything till now to warrant like that. And so it makes sense to me that they're these special forces guys, and they're going to come in and they like it's almost like World War II Green Beret kind of vibe, right? Where they're coming in and they can do anything.
Yeah. And what they're doing right now is laying munitions under the cobblestones at various intersections in Darujistan. And what's interesting is you see that it's described through Whiskey Jack's point of view. And he looks up at the window, and there's a man standing at the window with stained blood red hands, which he sees as some kind of portent. But of course, that's Baruch with the wine all over his hands. And he immediately sets sorry onto Krupp when he comes out. He says, follow that guy.
Yeah.
Which is not the person you want following you, I don't imagine.
No.
No.
But there is a telling moment in a couple of scenes which I quite liked.
Yes.
But we'll get to that.
Okay. Well, let's stay with the chronology, because we sort of jump away, but basically with Whiskey Jack's point of view, when he sets sorry on this mission, is basically he seems to be coming around to the view that Kalam and Quickbane have been at, which is that she's possessed.
Yeah.
Because he was kind of fighting that point of view before, trying to sort of see the good in her kind of thing. But he seems to be of the view now that they're right, that she is basically just a pawn of the gods. And then we cut completely to another scene where Crocus goes to visit his uncle, and asks, uncle just wants to know what it's like to be. How does he become a gentleman? Like a scene from My Fair Lady.
There was just in the scene, I think before that, Whiskey Jack has quite a profound moment where he says he'd made friends as if nothing of himself was at stake, and yet his friends might die. There, he'd finally called them what they were, and the friends of others might die, and sons, daughters, parents. The roll call of shattered lives seemed unending.
Yeah,
so good.
Great.
Whiskey Jack has some of the best lines all the time. Because he's like he's such a humanist for a grizzled soldier. And
he's been through so much, he can sort of almost look at it through an almost, slightly objective. He can sort of see the big picture and just see the futility of a lot of it.
That's what I like about the character. This idea of his depth, that he's been around, he's done so much, that he's almost completely without any affectation anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I like that the last time we got together, when they're sitting on the shore and they're looking at Darujistan, and they've been given the plan that they have to follow. And Whiskey Jack's like, sorry, Hebrew, that plan's out the window. This is what we're doing.
and he says it's out the window because it was designed to get us all killed.
Exactly. Yeah. So he's not stupid.
Yeah.
No, I like it.
So obviously they're on their own, kind of doing their own thing here. Well, we don't know to what extent they're following someone else's plan. But we get a history lesson for Crocus from his uncle Mammoth. We also met Mammoth earlier when Crocus ran through his house while he was being chased by assassins.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's quite a lore dump in this section, where, but I think the interesting part was they talk about Darujistan being born on Aruma.
Oh yeah.
And that is the idea being it's a city that was born on the rumor of the burial place of this Jagud tyrant.
That is correct. That is correct. The giant
That's what
barrow.
brought people to the area, and that's how the town started and grew up.
And then it's just become sort of like a faint,
It's,
almost
some
folklore
distant-
tale,
distant folklore memory. Yeah,
How old is Darujistan anyway? We're talking like 1,000 years, 2,000 years.
I'm not sure. I think I'm not sure, to be honest, but it's pretty old. I mean, I don't know what the time frame is actually for these cities, but I imagine, knowing Erikson, it would be a city built on another city built on another city.
Back through the ages.
Yeah, and then the other thing Mamet talks about are these 4 founding races. We've heard about the Jagut and the Imas, and they refer to another one called the Forkrul Assail. These 3 races being the sort of 3 original occupiers of the world, basically.
Yeah.
And they mentioned the Forkrul Assail as having disappeared early, and then the other 2 being the Jagut and the Imas, who were at war for so many times. In fact, I think it's Tool who talks about having been blooded in the 600th Jagut War or something. Which gives you an idea of how long the pogroms lasted. These guys.
Yeah, it was definitely the weight of ages in all of this.
Yeah,
And then,
especially when you start seeing like the Talan Imas coming out, and 100,000 years is a drop in the ocean to those guys. This seemed to be the closest thing to a lore dump we've had in the novel.
I think because the pace was a little bit slower, it might seem like that. I think, in my opinion, every other page is a lore dump. In all honesty, I just get I get so much information. This race, that race, he's this, he's that, blah 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 blah. But I think maybe, in my opinion, it might just have been the pacing of it.
Yeah,
unless you'd like time to breathe and time to get it across.
Yeah,
there's a lot of information passed along.
There is, absolutely. And I mean, leaving Crocus aside, because I must say I do find Crocus mildly annoying. Not in a bad way, just like the world's about him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get the impression he's like a scatterbrained teenager.
hormonal.
Yeah. Like it's all about me. Like
Yeah,
it's me.
exactly.
Yeah. You don't understand my pain.
Yeah, I'm in such pain.
Yeah, if he's not angsty, he's daydreaming about half-naked maidens and
Who he's convinced would love her if she was just given the chance. And then what I really liked, and maybe this goes to what you were saying, Alistair. We get a point of view from Sorry for the first time since the opening scenes of the novel.
Yeah.
And she gets completely triggered when Whiskey Jack uses a particular word. Seer.
Yeah.
And that seems to flick a switch in her own perception. And I'd love to hear what you guys thought of that, what was happening to her, and what was going on.
I liked it.
Oh, sorry, Al, you go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I liked it because I thought, like, you only briefly meet her in the beginning, and she seems great. She seems lovely. And then all this unfortunateness of no fault of her own happens to her. Like, she's just swept up in this world. And every time you see her, she's always bad-mouthed. People don't like her. People are scared of her. People are out to kill her. Yeah. She's been used to kill other people. And the minute that I like that, because the minute that she heard that word, there was an instantaneous reaction, which made me happy because it makes me realize that she is still in there. The girl is still in there. And that, and because it was instantaneous, it means that it hasn't been buried so deep that she's forgotten about that. She's still there, and she's still potentially able to remember who she is. And then it's just unfortunate, but I suppose it has to, because obviously the story's got to progress. What's his name? The guy is managing, because he gets freaked out, like, what? How did she break away? And then he manages to step up his power and then control her again. So I know it's only a couple of sentences, but it was very important to me. I came away from that with a little bit of hope for her, that she's not all bad. Because you kind of forget that, don't you? Because every other time she's mentioned, she's like the Antichrist.
Yeah.
You know?
And in reality, she's a victim.
She's a victim. She's just a pawn.
Absolutely.
Literally. She's another almost coin bearer.
Yeah.
In a sense.
100%.
You know?
My impression of that seer line was the only thing I could think of was back right at the beginning, that Ripper, or I can't remember the name of the old lady with the candles.
Yes, what was her name?
Not Ripper, Ritter.
Something the seer.
Something like that.
She was a seer,
And she made some sort of connection with Sorry at that point already. So maybe seer, I don't know, seer derogatory term, and that old lady is still in there and she hears that, and that's maybe what.
That's what I got. She said to her, I went back and read that. She says, as she's about to get taken, she says, I can't do much for you, but I'll do what I can.
Yeah.
And I think what she does is she installs herself as a sort of protective mechanism, so that Sorry is never completely taken over by the cotillion. Riga.
For the third time.
Yeah.
Riga the seer. Oh wow.
Because she says, look, she says something to the effect of, like, I can't really, it's coming now and there's nothing you can do about it, and I'll help you as much as I can. You know? At that point, the soldier just
slaps her to death, basically,
with one shot.
Crazy.
That was back in the good old days when there was only two characters. Both died.
So we get this humanity from Sorry briefly, and then, as you say, then the God kind of reasserts his.
There's a great line there where the God comes out right at the end. In a war of patience, Sorry smiled inwardly, the mortal is ever at a disadvantage.
Yeah. Well, that's so true. The gods, they got a longer time frame.
We'll wait.
Yeah. But what I also liked, it went to this thing that you were talking about a while back, Gareth, about Krupp and what magical abilities does he have.
Yeah.
And Sorry tracks him through the various markets, and she observes as he walks, basically pastries kind of flying off shelves into the various folds of his robe, and sweets and cakes flying around. He's just sort of walking around, and these things are just disappearing off shelves as he goes.
But I mean, he paints himself as this brilliant, mage of the age, when in reality, he's like a bumbling guy who steals pastries and spends most of his time at the Phoenix Inn.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So, I mean, he's yet to prove himself, other than his dreams, bro. Which is,
I think that's a couple. Rob knows, obviously, but I.
But also, he made that waxy coin thing, and didn't that start to fall apart anyway? Or there was something wrong with
everyone's hands and everything.
What a disaster! Krupp's a mess.
I think
a delightful mess.
I think he's like Baldric from Blackadder.
Yes,
but
intelligent, but far cleverer.
Yeah. And she follows him all the way to the Phoenix Inn.
Yeah.
And then she gets accosted by some sex perverts at the door, and just offs him,
stabs him in the eye straight away,
into the eye.
Sorry, before we jump to that, does she? Does she knows what he is though? She gives him a name, doesn't she? Or does she tell Whiskey Jack later? Yeah.
I don't recall. I'm not sure.
Let's see.
Because I think she figures out what he is.
I think Whiskey Jack does too. I think he says, follow that guy he's some kind of.
I know he says seer, and it triggers her. Yeah. But I think maybe I'm misremembering, but I think she finds out later by observing his way to the tavern what he actually is. Or maybe I'm incorrect.
I'm reading it here, Al. What did the thug called him? So she overheard someone calling him crap.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I'm
sorry. Resume to work. She'd already seen the fat little man. What did the thug call him? Crap. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where she gets the name from. Overhearing it.
And she goes in, just walks into the Phoenix Inn, and starts makes an error by ordering the best beer in the house.
Yeah.
And he reveals her to be a bit not really on the inside track.
And there's those two lovely barmaids who are.
They say, "Oh, you killed so and so." Oh, well, he was an asshole anyway. So,
and also, I think grateful to see another girl around the place, probably.
yeah, and then Crocus walks in. You just imagine the scene, like sees the hot girl at the bar, and suddenly he's like, "Ah, cool," It comes up and then fumbles his coins, and all the coins, including the coin, go scattering out across the floor. And instantly reckons, okay, that's the coin bearer.
But also the coin doesn't stop spinning.
No, it spins on the counter. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, not that one. Puts it back in his pocket.
And then and everyone's there's a moment where everyone's wondering who's killed this guy outside, and Crocus sees he's got blood all over her hand and a dagger, and then doesn't say anything.
Yeah. Because he's smitten.
Because she's hard.
Because she's dark and mysterious, man.
Yeah, no,
she's like a teenage emo song.
Yeah. And then I think the last scene of the whole section is we go back to Quickburn and Kalam, who were missing from the road crew.
Yeah.
They're in another bar, or Kalam's in another bar called Quip's Bar near the Phoenix Inn. I looked at the map, as Adil said, to see what was where. And he is trying to, but struggling to get in touch with the local Assassins Guild.
Yes, that's correct.
Which is interesting. But that's not working. So he goes and finds Quickburn, who's busy getting a ritual ready in a nearby hut. And we learn that Quickburn is about to do a covert mission into the realm of shadow. We see him sort of casting the initial spells to break down all the barriers that wouldn't allow you to get into this realm. And you get a sense you're going to start to see an unveiling of some power here.
And also, doesn't he say something along the lines of he's not even sure if it's possible?
Yeah.
Like to go through that door or to get it to open, he's not even sure it's doable.
Yeah, but Quickburn's a bit annoying because he's enigmatic, but he loves being enigmatic. He loves not knowing. He loves no one knowing how much he knows at any time.
I do get that impression as well.
Yeah. And that's it. That's the end.
There's that awesome at the end there when he's in the realm of shadow. Quickburn sat down, folding his legs and clasping his hands in his lap. "Shadow throne," he said, "Lord of shadows, I am come to your realm. Will you receive my presence as befits a peaceful visitor?" And then from the hills came an answer, "The howling of hounds." Just like, oh, damn.
That's a good way to say it.
It's a hell of a cliffhanger.
Yeah, it is. It's a good chapter end. Yeah, so as Al said, we're getting a convergence on Darujistan of all the characters that we've now come across. Last time I said, well, there won't be any new characters, and I was wrong by about 6 characters. So I don't want to make any such promises. But so guys, I posed the question in the group, man. If you're going to put together a D&D group, a D&D character, four character group.
Yeah.
Of the characters that you know so far in the novel, who's in your party and why?
I can go first. I got the list here, if that's fine with everybody else.
You wrote it down.
Of course.
I did. Okay.
Yeah.
So initially, but I think it was very, very late, I wrote Crone just because I was at that point being endlessly entertained by Crone.
Yeah.
But I quickly changed my mind. So I've got Quickburn, because he's obviously a super powerful mage, but also pretty level-headed compared to some of the other mages in the series so far. I think a lot of them are a bit emotional or crazy. Then Mallet, the healer, just because I think that, in this world, you've got to have...
want a cleric, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Crocus, because he's youthful and fast and he's an assassin. And then finally, I decided to replace Crone begrudgingly Perrin, because he is a warrior, but he's probably the youngest and most able-bodied warrior that we've come across so far. So that would be my full character party.
So you had Perrin, Quickburn, Mallet, and Oh, you had basically bridge burners and Crocus of all people.
And Crocus, youthful fast assassin.
Yeah, no,
That's my logic.
I'm not sure about Crocus. I'm not sure I would trust him to sit the right way on a toilet seat, let alone get the treasure.
Maybe I'm thinking of someone else then. Okay. Look, he's entertaining. And he has a coin that spins forever, and that'll come in handy.
Yeah.
You remember I played a character with ventriloquism for a year, and
true.
Uh-huh.
That's true.
We remember that.
Successfully, if I recall correctly.
Very successfully.
Yeah.
Great
What about
skill.
you guys?
I would take Prone for transport and shit
There we
sink
go.
because
Thank
Prone's
you.
just awesome. I'd take hair shirts, Pinocchio for firewood. I'd turn him into torches. Firewood. I'd take Aaron because he can't be killed.
Yeah. True. He's coming back. Yeah.
He's coming back. And then I'd take Whiskey Jack, man, because he just knows.
You need a leader.
Yeah, he's just got his stuff together. That's who I'd take, yeah.
That's a very different party to Gareth, I must say.
Picking a fighter is hard because all the fighters that we spend time with are all old.
Mm.
A lot of the bridge burners are grizzled old men at this
Yeah,
point, you know.
That's true.
Yeah, it's not like they're donning armor and like, hey, Sally ho. This is all like knife in the dark, wet work kind of assassin vibes. Yeah.
What about you,
Well,
Adil?
my fighter's going to be Tok the Younger.
Oh,
Take Chuck the Younger.
Yeah, like I think there's something to Tok. I mean, he's being able to shoot people off while he's riding, and I think that insight that he's gained through losing the eye, it's going to come in handy. So I'm back in Tok. I wouldn't mind having an undead on my team. So Tool is on my team too.
Yeah, that's true.
That's pretty good.
So I'll
The
bring
transport
Tool in.
problem solved.
Yeah, exactly. And then I really have a soft spot for Tattersail. I don't know where she's gone now, but like Tattersail's on my team as the mage.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then lastly, I can't resist Sorry. Sorry's on my team.
Oh, wow.
She's
you and I have a
crazy.
lot of crossover, Deal.
Dude, when you read this chapter, you're going to be more convinced than ever that Sorry was the right choice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, dude, great.
No, that's cool.
Who's on your team, bro?
No, I was thinking quite similarly. As you guys know, I'm not a great fan of the idea of balance in D&D parties. So I thought, I take your point about fighters, and we haven't really seen any fighters in action, but we've seen a lot of assassins. And if you're going underground, I think I need a party of 4 assassins.
Oh, nice.
So I'm picking Kalam, even though you haven't seen much of him yet.
Oh yeah.
Maybe that's the one choice that relies a bit on future knowledge.
Sure.
But I'm picking
A better assassin than Crocus, you mean?
Top with his bow shooting, fantastic. Sorry, best knife in the dark there is. And then I'm going to take Ralik Nom as my 4th assassin.
Nice.
So, and maybe
that's a cool team.
And if I have to pick a reserve, and I'm sticking to the assassin theme, I'll probably put Topper in there for a bit of magic.
Topper was on the list. I just thought, yeah, wow.
Yeah, I also picked Sorry as well, but I didn't put her in for the final 4.
Okay, yeah.
Because she just wind her up and let her go.
Yeah, no, she seems to be.
As I'm listening to everyone, I'm starting to think that maybe I was talking about Tok the Younger and just got the names confused.
Well, you
Crocus sounds like a terrible choice.
Assassin, I thought that.
No, okay, then then there's a slight overlap and just my poor memory calling anyone whatever.
All right.
I think there's an all-female team in there somewhere as well, with like the Empress and Lorne and like maybe Sorry
and Tattersail.
Tattersail.
How's that for a team?
Oh,
Charlie's Angels.
Of Malazan.
The Emperor's Angels.
You gotta have Lady Simtal as well.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
The seducer.
Yeah. It's like the worst Charlie's Angels
ever. Who's Bosley though?
Yeah, oh no.
It's got to be Whiskey Jack. Oh, crap!
Yeah, Crap's Bosley.
Crap has
Angels.
Angels.
Most generous Crop has one. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh my word.
Oh, that was fun. I like those teams. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Right.
Great place to bring it
Parting
together.
shots, closing comments.
Grateful chapters flowed into each other very well. Felt we're into the story now, and it's progressing. Even though there were some time jumps, I appreciate that the chapters are starting to flow more linearly into one another. So yeah, I think it's definitely getting easier for sure.
And the hits keep coming, man. Like there's big stuff in every chapter.
So good.
Predictions: who's going to live? Who's going to die?
I have no idea.
Lord. No one
I don't
dies
even know
in
who the
anything,
good
right?
guys are.
Yeah, no, they are.
Yeah.
Good question.
Oh, who are the good guys? Are the
Yeah,
what is
Malazan
good?
good?
Is
Are
there
they
such
good
a thing?
guys? Yeah.
Is there such a thing? Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to see where it feels like it's drawing. I know it's only halfway through, but it does
Yeah.
feel like it's getting to a rather explosive point, which I'm very keen to see
Mm.
and see what
Well,
explodes and.
Well, he's going to say they're mining the city streets. Explosions seem inevitable.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, and don't forget, what do we know about the Ridgistan?
Oh, of course. It's gas, baby. It's a gas.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I never thought of that.
Woo.
The Ridgistan go boom.
Anyway, that's for the next few chapters. I look forward to reading them with you guys again. It's been
Cool.
Alright, yep.
Awesome. And thanks to everyone for watching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Keep the
Thanks,
comments
guys.
coming.
Thank
Tell
you.
your friends.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Cheers, guys.
Good night.